Oh boy, Jim Rutherford has done it again. On the 100% Hockey Podcast with Darren Millard and John Shannon, you had yourselves Vancouver Canucks President of Hockey Operations Jim Rutherford explaining what's next for the Vancouver Canucks. Now this is a 1-hour show, so we're not going to dive into every single thing that Rutherford talks about here, but there are enough pieces of info in this interview that I do think we should dive into. They were posted about by various Canucks-related Twitter accounts, and I do think that everybody deserves the love for going out there and actually transcribing this and listening to it, so it makes our job a little easier on YouTube to talk about this stuff. So I'm going to leave a link in the description to the 100% Hockey Podcast episode with Millard and Shannon and Rutherford, and we're also going to give some props over to folks on social media, particularly Canucks News Summaries, who went out there and summarized, in 3 very long parts, the Rutherford interview. First, though, let's dive into what Adam Kierszenblat tweeted out. This is what Rutherford mentioned on the podcast about rebuilding, and how, as long as the Vancouver Canucks had Miller and Hughes, the team could not go to a rebuild. Yeah, well, imagine how quickly things change, right? We just made a video on JT Miller and the New York Rangers earlier on this channel. You want to see how he's doing? He's not doing very well, even after the gold medal. Taj went out there and quoted another Rutherford piece here. I did know at the start of the year that there was a good possibility that Quinn Hughes would be moved, knowing what his thinking has been over the past year or two. That part wasn't a surprise. And, I think this is kind of incriminating, is it not? It's like, oh yeah, I knew Quinn Hughes would be traded. We knew. It's been a year. It's been 2 years. We knew the guy was going to leave. Then why did you go out there and re-sign all the players this summer if they knew that Quinn was gone? Should be fired on the spot, Taj goes out there and said. Probably it was just a wasted effort to stay relevant for the small chance that Quinn would stay. Any way you slice it, losing Quinn and the seemingly cursed collapse since trading Bo is probably the darkest time in Canucks history. And I've been here since '82, Zach Friedrich said. It just could not have gotten worse. I'm not sure how even a pedigreed management group has survived that, unless the owner is actually admitting he was a big part of the problem. Furthermore, you had this post made by Adam Kierszenblat as well. Jim Rutherford via the 100% Hockey Podcast said, I don't know if we can advance enough that we can improve for a playoff spot, but that should be our goal coming out of training camp next September. That's awesome. The Vancouver Canucks want to go out there and contend for a playoff spot in 2027. Is that possible? I don't know. McKenna's Jawbreaker says that in order for that to happen and for the Canucks to get a chance at the playoffs, 1, McKenna needs to be generational. Zeev Buium needs to be half the player Quinn is. Vilander needs to be Heroic Light. Demko needs to be healthy. Pettersson needs to be 100-point form. Rossi needs to be an 80-point guy. Besser needs to wake up. And Ogren needs to be a second-line player. Are we serious, Canucks? Essentially, in order for the Canucks to actually compete for a playoff spot next year, everything needs to go right. And that is exactly what we had been saying since last year. Now, let's go over to the Canucks News Summary post. He went out there and had 3 very long parts about the Canucks. He says it's long, and I don't recap the parts where he talks about Crosby and the Olympics. Part 1 of 3. So, starting things out, Rutherford talks about Tyler Myers, how the Canucks are working through the trade process now, and they will see where it goes. They were being cautious in holding him out for the game against Winnipeg, and Alvin is leading the trade. Rutherford also received an update earlier yesterday morning. Everyone is trying to work together to see if something can come together on Myers. In regards to this season, Rutherford says it's been disappointing as a season could be. They knew they needed to be stronger at center, and they weren't able to do that until the Hughes trade. They have been dealing with a ton of injuries. Once they knew Hughes wasn't going to return, they had to go down a totally different path. If they waited to trade Hughes in the offseason, they would not have received as strong of an offer. They would have been backed into a corner. After trading Hughes, the Canucks knew it was time to officially go into a rebuild. Again, this doesn't really make sense. It's like if you knew Hughes was going to leave 2 years ago, then why'd you prolong the agony? If you knew there was no chance after that playoff run in 2024 that this guy was going to stick around, especially after all his buddies ended up leaving and the leadership collapsed, why delay the inevitable? Oh, because we think we can capitalize and still have a good run in 2025. Nah, man, it just doesn't seem reasonable at this point. Going into the season, the Canucks knew there was a good possibility that Hughes would have to get traded. They understood what Hughes was thinking the last couple of years. See, that's exactly what we were talking about here, man. Quentin Hughes did not want to stay in Vancouver. There was not an ounce of him in his body that he wanted to be a Vancouver Canuck long-term. Worst captain since Mark Messier. Next comment over here. This is the short-term future Canucks plans, courtesy of Jim Rutherford and Canucks News Summaries. They'll know more over the next week, and they will have a better answer after the trade deadline. Yeah, the trade deadline's a week away. It's going to be a pretty big one. They are going to acquire as many young assets as possible, probably more likely draft picks than prospects. I like the sound of that, man. Vancouver needs more draft picks. They'll position themselves as strong as they can going into the draft and free agency, while also continuing to let the young players adjust to the National Hockey League. Rutherford thinks the young defensemen are doing a very good job, and he's looking forward to the draft and free agency to see the changes that the team makes. They're also looking forward to build the team up over the next couple of years. Over the next week and a half, the Canucks will be as active as possible if something makes sense on the trade market. They're not looking to just give away their players, and they're also not sure how many young players will be available to acquire. They'll look at all possibilities and stick to the plan of staying younger and building a team that grows together. As of right now, Rutherford says the trade market is very slow. Others in the same position as them are also surprised at how slow everything is. It may end up as a slower deadline because some of the playoff rule changes too, which possibly opens things up closer to the deadline itself. Rutherford would not say there was a lot of trade talk over the roster freeze, as half the GMs were at the Olympics, and also he's sure they were all talking, but then again the GMs not at the Olympics didn't really have too many conversations. Turns out there were a few untouchables, but not many. It's a very short list here for the Vancouver Canucks. Going back over onto the part 2 of Rutherford and his commentary here on the show, there is a discussion on being in a Canadian market. There is nothing wrong with the pressure. There's a conversation on Filip Hronek. He is on that short list of untouchables. The Canucks haven't got to the point of naming a captain. It'll be a summer discussion, but Hronek would also be on that very short list. He has all the qualities of being a very good captain via Jim Rutherford. What you see on the ice is what he is off the ice. A very good leader. Rutherford says here at the bottom he jokes around that he would give the Canucks some great headlines if he told them what he was really thinking about this season, but when asked if it's a teardown or a retool, he says he has made that clear. As long as they had Miller and Hughes, they would not rebuild. Once they had to move Miller and they knew Hughes wasn't coming back, they had no choice but to go full rebuild. They'll still have some veterans, though. Whether they keep who they have or trade them and bring in different guys in the offseason. Rutherford also definitely states that they are in a rebuild. Signing free agents, oh yeah. Vancouver is not on some players' free agent lists, not surprising there. Rutherford says he is seeing a trend where the majority of players want to play in the US. There are some players that want to come to Vancouver. The Canucks treat players extremely well. They like the passion of the market and the city. They'll have to get a chance to get free agents, but they may not be top players. And they need to get as many young players and establish that group so they can grow together and want to stay for a long time. Now, there's another conversation here about nationality. Players that want to be in Vancouver are usually from Western Canada or BC. European players like Vancouver because it reminds them of European cities. Daniel and Henrik have made it a very attractive place. That is absolutely great to hear too. Going forward, the Canucks need to acquire many young players. They're officially well into their rebuild, and they have 3 firsts this year because of Ottawa forfeiting theirs, plus the 2 seconds that the Canucks have. In regards to the NHL Draft, Rutherford says he has a player that he likes more than the others, but they haven't had their final draft meeting. There will be a lot of debate over who their pick will be, and they're definitely going to finish dead last. Now, there's a conversation on Adam Foote here as well. I don't really want to get into that. Let's just see what's in the last part here of Rutherford's long commentary. There's conversation on Demko, on Hedel, the low points of the season, and then struggling at home, how he doesn't really have an answer why. You know, this video has gotten pretty long already. I don't really want to drag it out any more than we have, but ultimately it does seem like the Vancouver Canucks are just being realistic about how everything is going down. They're saying all the right things. They want to shop the vets. They want to get younger. All we got to do is wait and see if they actually do that. So for now, link is going to be in the description of the 100% Hockey Podcast show. If you want to listen to the 1-hour interview in full, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Rutherford and his comments on the Canucks? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.